Okay, good morning. Welcome back to the DHARMA IAS UPSC CSC Main 2025 test series. Today we will discuss test number 5, which is paper first. Okay, quickly we'll read the questions. Okay, first question, comment on the following questions in about 150 words each. First question 1A, paternalism can provide the condition of freedom. 8, withhold freedom itself. Isaiah Berlin. 1B, the police exists by nature and that it is prior to the individual. Then 1C, the true source of right is duty. If we all discharge our duties, rights will not be far to seek. 1D, Hobbes relieved sovereignty completely from the disabilities which Bodin had inconsistently left standing subine. 1E, will not force is the basis of the state. TH Green. Then 2A, critically examine the deliberative model of democracy, analyze the culturalist approach to human rights, discuss the main political ideas contained in the Manusmriti. 3A, what is communitarianism? Discuss the conception of justice in the critics of communitarian theories. 20 marks. 3B, examine the critics of Marxism. 3C, is Gramsci a theoretician of superstructure? Give reasons in support of your answer. 4A, enumerate and discuss the key tenets of the neoliberal view of the state. 4B, critically examine Hannah Arendt's conception of modernity. What do you understand or what do you mean by obligation? 4C, examine the place of obligation in political theory. Section B, IGP 5A, contextualize the water and territorial disputes in relation to federalism in India. 5B, critically examine the implications of inclusion of fundamental duties in the Constitution of India. 5C, what impact have the elections in India had on the weaker sections of the society? Write short note on the women's movements in the post-colonial period. 5E, should first past the post system be replaced with proportional representation system? Comment. 6A, the jurisdiction and powers of the Supreme Court of India are in their nature and extend wider than those exercised by the highest court of any other country. 6B, discuss the pattern of political parties from one dominant party system to coalition politics in national politics. 6C, how do directive principles substantiate the rights already assured by the fundamental rights? 7A, critically examine the role of governor in India's federal structure. 7B, examine the role of National Commission for Minorities in preserving, promoting and protecting the rights of minorities in India. 7C, analyze the role of caste in electoral politics. 8A, what were main points in debate on secularism in the Constituent Assembly? Is secularism an imposition on the Indian society? 8B, analyze the evolution of the environmentalist movements in India. 8C, in what way do the institutions like National Commission for Women and Human Rights Commission help us enhance our citizenship rights? So these are the questions we are going to discuss in today's discussion. Okay, we'll start. Okay, question number 1A. Paternalism can provide the condition of freedom. 8, withhold freedom itself. Isaiah Berlin. Okay, so this is from Isaiah Berlin's two concepts of liberty. Directly start with that. Two concepts of liberty. 1958, Isaiah Berlin gave his own understanding of liberty. Conventionally, liberty is understood negative liberty and positive liberty. That is traditional understanding. Negative liberty, no role for state in the individual's life. Classical liberals. Positive liberty, positive role for the state in the individual's life. TH Green, positive liberals. So these are the mainstream concepts, two concepts in the liberty. Isaiah Berlin gave his own understanding of positive and negative liberty. Understand this, especially in the context of this positive liberals or welfare states notion. The welfarist or the positive liberals argued that the state should intervene in the individual's life in the context of empowerment. The state should make affirmative actions in the interest of weaker sections. That is positive liberals' understanding. But Isaiah Berlin countered this view, and in both the cases for Isaiah Berlin, understand this is important, for Isaiah Berlin, in both the cases, his understanding of positive liberty and negative liberty. For him, positive liberty is capacity and it is individual's choice. State has no role to play here. Here also state has no role to play in the individual's life. So, absence of restraint in both the context, negative as well as positive liberty. So understand, very important, for Isaiah Berlin, in both the concepts, negative as well as positive, there is no role for the state. Understand? Why? Because Isaiah Berlin was arguing that, yes, you can say that paternalism or welfare state might provide freedom or empowerment, but the state might get power or state may become authoritarian in the context of positive role for the state in the individual state. So to avoid that authoritarianism, Isaiah Berlin was arguing that there should not be any role for the state in the individual's life, negative as well as positive. In the negative context, he was saying that in the political sphere, that is equality before law and etc. So no restraint. The state's job is to observe rule of law, maintain law and order, that is sufficient, not more than that. In the positive context, it is individual sphere. Individual has to decide about his or her capacity. If someone is not capable to fly, it is not the issue of state. State cannot do anything about that. That is his argument. So context was positive liberals' advocacy for welfare state. But it was argued that welfare state might turn into the authoritarian state. So Isaiah Berlin talked about absence of restraint in both the sphere. So you can conclude with positive liberals once again. So this concept, Isaiah Berlin's concept of positive liberty is different from positive liberals, but positive liberals' argument is valid, sound. Why? Because we need affirmative actions in the interest of weaker sections. Positive discrimination. You can add Constitution of India, Indian Constitution, Article 16, 4, 15, etc. Fine. So you can counter Isaiah Berlin in the conclusion, but understand the context of his argument. Okay. Moving ahead. Next question. The police exists by nature and that it is prior to the individual. Aristotle. Police means here state. So again, you can directly start with Aristotle in his book Politics, the Politics. Greek tradition talked about state is prior to individual. You can start with that. State is prior to individual. Okay. Why? He established this in different ways. So state is natural for Aristotle. One cannot live without state because man is political and social animal. One who lives without state can either be beast or god, according to Aristotle. Correct? Logically, definitely you can say that the individual is prior to state. But if you apply utility or the purpose of Aristotle, then Aristotle says that Man cannot fulfill his complete demands without state. The state is the platform where man can gets everything. It is higher than family, society. State is supreme. So that is his argument. The police exists by nature and that is prior to the individual. It is not an artificial, it is prior to the individual. So this is again organic theory of state, natural theory of state, organic theory of state. Later on, used by Hegel. Okay, state is march of God on earth and etc. Again, which was misused by Hitler and other fascist scholars. So there is scope, there is danger if you are saying that the state is prior to individual. But Aristotle's intention was to provide the legitimacy for the state. But as we know, it was misused. Fine. Okay. Next question. The true source of right is duty. If we all discharge our duties, the rights will not be far to seek. M.K. Gandhi. Okay. So it is Gandhism or political philosophy of Gandhi. You can start with Gandhi. Under the influence of Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, Gandhi gave duty right concept. Okay. So duty and rights are interlinked. We cannot imagine in isolation. Unlike Western or liberal tradition, Gandhism believes in the continuity in the context of duties and rights, no separation. Okay, that is Gandhian philosophy. Because for Gandhi, Nishkam karma was the source influenced by Bhagavad Gita. For the stability of society, he argued that we should perform our duties, moral duties towards the society. So he rejected individualism of the Western world, or consumerism of the Western, or Machiavellianism of the West, because he gave that community oriented philosophy. Okay, so good, public good, we can say, or greater good is important. Of course, individuals are important, but individuals must not think they are outside of society, community. Without performing duty, we cannot have stability in the society. It will lead to the anarchy then. So Gandhi believed in duty and rights continuity. Same thoughts are also given by Lasky. You can quote Lasky in the conclusion. Similar lines, Lasky also argue. So in that context, even Constitution of India has also provisions like through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, fundamental duties though not enforceable. So that is in Gandhian tradition. You can mention that in the conclusion. Fine. Okay. Next question. Hobbes relieved sovereignty completely from the disabilities which Bodin had inconsistently left standing. Hobbes relieved sovereignty completely from the disabilities which Bodin had inconsistently left standing. Okay, you can directly start with Leviathan. Hobbes, in his famous book Leviathan, gave complete theory of sovereignty. That's why we call Hobbes as the first modern thinker. Simple. Okay, Jean Bodin also tried to give theory of sovereignty, but he restricted state authority in the sphere of religion. So he has not given complete theory of sovereignty. Bodin, in the religious sphere, he gives complete authority to the church. But Hobbes was the first person who talked about absolute state, complete sovereignty. That's why we call him the first modern thinker. On the basis of his state of understanding of state of nature, which is anarchical. Human nature is greedy. There is no scope for the industry, welfare, etc. So war against war in the state of nature. To avoid that anarchy, he creates complete state, absolute state. So even Macpherson criticized Hobbes as he starts with individualistic but ends with absolutist. But that is not correct understanding. Sabine argues that his primary concern was security and individual. That is right to life. Right to life. You can conclude with his theory of sovereignty was later on used by legal theorists like John Austin, that is monistic theory of sovereignty, though it was later on criticized by the pluralist. That can be your flow. Simple. Next question. Will not force is the basis of the state. T.H. Green. Will not force is the basis of the state. Understand the context of this statement directly in the introduction. Try to write context in the introduction itself. Okay. For 10 markers, this is very important. Will not force is the basis of the state or authority. Will not force is the basis of the state or authority. T.H. Green. We all know that T.H. Green is positive liberal. Positive liberal. What was the context? Marxists criticized, especially Karl Marx criticized, liberal state is an instrument of bourgeois class and it is an instrument of exploitation. It is based on force. It is based on coercion. So Marx criticized the state as an instrument of bourgeois class, exploitative in nature, based on force, based on coercion. Because Locke gave the concept of consent, that is consent-based state, representative democracy. So liberals were saying that the state is based on consent of the people. But Marx criticized that your consent doesn't matter. Whosoever controls the foundation, base, that is economy, controls the state. Now, to challenge this Marxist understanding, T.S. Green said that, no, you are wrong. Will, that is will of the people or consent of the people important. Based on that, state is founded. So he tried to establish that liberal tradition in the context of Marxist attack on the liberal state. Later on, Gramsci criticized this statement. According to Gramsci, again, Gramsci was saying that your consent is manufactured. Your consent is not real, your consent is manufactured. So this debate continued. Okay, you can conclude with, we can say, liberal tradition of free and fair elections to establish legitimacy, etc. Okay. The state must establish its legitimacy through various means. Otherwise, any state can face revolt. You can give example Bangladesh in the recent past. Fine. You can connect with the current affairs also. Next question. Critically examine the deliberative model of democracy. You can start with deliberative model of democracy. Okay, democracy, rule of the people. Democracy has to be deliberative. No need to separate the words. Deliberation, very old tradition from Aristotle. Aristotle argued that one person arguing or the common people arguing together can reach to better conclusion than single or expert person who has complete knowledge or who holds the knowledge. Okay. So he was talking about deliberation. We need deliberation. Even common people under the deliberation can come to the better conclusion than expert working alone. That was Aristotle. That is deliberative model of democracy or the need of deliberation. So this deliberative democracy became popular post 1980s in the context of decline of representative democracy. decline of representative democracy or decline of legislature. Decline of legislature. Why? Because representative democracy was considered as the uh, representing the will of the people, but because of decline of legislature in the context of debate, discussion, and background of representatives, people started questioning the representative democracy, and it was argued that we need deliberation. So, in that context, people like Habermas, Joshua Cohen, Amartya Sen, Hannah Arendt started arguing for the deliberation. Even John Rawls. John Rawls. So all these people started saying that we need deliberation. Coffee houses, coffee club. Amartya Sen was arguing for the argumentation, deliberation. Joshua Cohen made various observations or prerequisites for the deliberation. Deliberation provides legitimacy. For that, deliberation requires empowerment, etc. All those features Joshua Cohen has given. Now, it is required, there is no doubt about that. Even Amartya Sen has also argued the same in his book An Argumentative India. And even Indian Constitution has also, or the Indian polity also tried to inculcate all those features through 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. That is deliberation, along with representative democracy. But this deliberative model, if we want to succeed this particular model, deliberation requires some prerequisites. As even Joshua Cohen has also argued, that deliberation should be non-coercive method or environment. Inclusion should be there. Third, empowerment should be there. Otherwise, if you are deliberating but you are excluding some section of the society, then that deliberation will not work. That deliberation will not give legitimacy. For example, if government wants to bring a bill on any issue, suppose say for example Uniform Civil Code 44, but what is normal practice? Government gives ample time for the public, people and other stakeholders to think over that particular bill. But suppose government introduce this bill in on short notice, say only 10 days gap is there. So there will not be any public reasoning behind this, because people will not give any inputs within that short period of time. Fine. Public reasoning is very important according to Habermas. Now, suppose government passes this bill without this due deliberation, this bill might face legitimacy. Though government has majority in the parliament, yes, government has every right to pass that bill with majority, but if government fails to bring other stakeholders, all stakeholders on the board, this bill, though government has majority, might not get legitimacy. So for that matter, we require deliberation, and in that deliberation from all sections of the society, all the stakeholders who are interested in the UCC must be deliberated, must be on the platform. Otherwise, it will face the legitimation crisis. So that is required. So deliberation, that is fine, but inclusion should be there, non-coercive environment should be there, and empowerment of the people should be there to be successful. Understood? This is deliberative democracy. You can add scholars Joshua Cohen, Amartya Sen, Habermas, John Rawls in the deliberative democracy. Fine. Next question. Analyze the cultural relativist approach to human rights. Analyze cultural relativist approach to human rights. Again, you can start with definition of human rights. Just because we are human, we are having some rights. Yes, Rampal has given this definition. Human rights, just because we are humans. Now, this aspect, cultural, relativist aspect of human rights, we have to understand cultural relativist aspect in the context of liberal view of human rights. Liberals projected universal declaration of human rights, universal, inalienable rights of human being, that is UDHR, and they wanted to have these rights across the globe universally, east or west. So because of that, cultural relativists started arguing you are not taking into consideration particulars or culture or local issues. This cultural relativism, this term was coined by Franz Boas in 1911, and this cultural relativism became prominent in the context of Asian values promoted by leaders like Mahathir Mohamad, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, Mahathir Mohamad of Malaysia. Cultural relativists were arguing that liberals' understanding of human rights is biased. It is Western cultural imperialism. Because if you want to understand rights, you have to understand cultures also. So cultural relativists like Asian value system gives more priority to the community or society over individuals. Over individuals. Because in the liberal world, individuals are the center of analysis. Individual is considered as isolated or atomistic man or atomistic being. So individuals have no role to play, or society has no role to play in the individual's life. So individuals enjoy complete rights, basic rights. But cultural relativists talk about community specific rights. For them, community or society is important than individuals. So individuals must sacrifice some in the context of common good, public good, or the society. Even Lee Kuan Yew argued that in the interest of society, individuals must sacrifice some freedoms, basic rights. So he admired China and other East Asian countries, and even he used this model in Singapore. So this is Singapore's model or Asian value system. So this is cultural relativism. We have to understand rights in the context of culture. Relativism is there. You cannot universally impose your values on other cultures, other societies. That is their argument, cultural relativist argument. But this cultural relativism was also criticized by other scholars like Amartya Sen, or feminist scholars, Saila Ben Habib. According to Amartya Sen, these cultural relativists, they are putting these values or these Asian values just to maintain their authoritarian regimes. And Saila bin Habib was saying that the feminist angle is missing in this cultural relativism. In many cultures, women's issues are not taken into consideration. So women still face discrimination within the cultures. So these cultural relativists are not talking anything about this issue. So feminists and these social liberals are against this cultural relativism. They talk about, we can say, giving justice on the basis of values or some basic values like human dignity. Okay, like Immanuel Kant's understanding. So this is cultural relativism. Understood? Okay. Next question. Discuss the main political ideas contained in the Manusmriti. Again, very simple question. Manusmriti. Discuss the main political ideas contained in Manusmriti. Okay. Straightforward question. Manu, first law giver of the country, according to Smriti tradition. Okay. Shrutis and Smritis. Manusmriti is one of the oldest book on social order. Manusmriti was technically based on, or it was related to social order other than political order. But there are certain political ideas in Manusmriti also. So Manusmriti, based on Manu, first lawgiver. Almost all Manusmriti ideas are reflected in Kautilya's Arthashastra. Almost Manusmriti's ideas. So Manusmriti also talks about Ashtang theory, then six-fold theory, that is Mandal theory, sorry, rather Mandal theory, six-fold theory, four-fold theory, then Manu's views on punishment based on Varna system, then Manu's ideas on state, it is quasi-contractual, okay, king is son of God, and there is contract between God and people, and king represents the God, but this king is divine personality, but king has no divine rights. Divine rights. This is the difference between the Manusmriti's idea and king can do no wrong. Fine. So king was absolute. He was above everything. In Manusmriti, king was divine personality, but he had no divine rights. That means he had to follow Raj Dharma. Raj Dharma. He has to follow some conducts. He has to follow, maintain Varna system. He has to follow some conducts. He should appoint some Brahmins as an advisors. King should be from Kshatriya or Brahmin clans. And Shudras and Vaishyas were restricted. Then Manu also talks about dharma. This dharma is not religion. It is justice, righteousness. Righteousness. But this justice is different than today's world. You can mention contextualist approach. Here. Context was different. At that time, justice, meaning of justice was different. What was justice at that time? Maintain Varna system, four Varna system. That was justice, that was righteousness. And king was to follow that. But that is not possible today. Okay, fine. So this is all about Manusmriti. You can add all those ideas in your answer. You can quote Radhakrishnan. No need to mention critical analysis. Question is just discuss the main political ideas contained in the Manusmriti. You can add in the conclusion Ambedkar, no issue, fine. You can mention Radhakrishnan in the support and Ambedkar as a critic of Manusmriti. Simple. Next question. What is communitarianism? Discuss the conception of justice in the critics of communitarian theorists. Again, communitarianism. This is also we have to understand in the context of liberal word or liberalism. This idea, communitarism idea, became prominent in 1970s, 80s, 1980s in the works of Walzer, Michael Walzer, then Sandel, Michael Sandel, Taylor, Charles Taylor, Will Kimlick also. So these people propounded this idea of communitarism. What is this? Liberals talk about individuals. Understand this. This is very simple and important also. And state. So there is no gap between state or individuals. I mean, liberals believed states and individuals, they are the two entities in the system, and state must not intervene in the individual's life. Individuals are free. They are like atoms, atomistic man. So they are not situated in the society. They are free. They can do anything. And there is no contribution of society or community in the life of individuals. Individuals are free to do anything. That is liberalism provided by John Locke and other scholars. So liberals remote society community from the individual's life, and liberals gave complete supremacy to the individuals. In that context, many issues emerge like individualism, consumerism, political or social issues in the society. So communitarians started arguing that look, there are three entities, individuals, in between that community, and then comes state. So these three entities we have to discuss according to communitarians. And communitarians give importance to community rights, community goods over individuals. For liberals like John Rawls, right is prior to good, but for communitarians, good is prior to right. So that is the difference. So communitarians hold that society or community is prior or important than individuals. And individuals must understand that their development is only possible in the community. So you cannot isolate an individual from the community or the culture or the society. So man is situated self. Man is situated self according to communitarians. So this is communitarianism. Understood this particular concept? Now after discussing this concept, then come to the topic, discuss the conception of justice in the critics of communitarian theorists. So all these communitarians criticize John Rawls, primarily John Rawls' understanding of justice. We all know that John Rawls, a social liberal, gave his theory of justice in 1971 book, famous book, Theory of Justice, where he talked about man in the original position under the veil of ignorance, through the social contract, gives theory of justice and three principles: maximum liberty to all, maximum equality of opportunity, and difference principle, lexical order. So John Rawls created his theory of justice based on that hypothetical analysis, original situation. That is no role of community, role of society, while giving his theory of justice. This aspect, original situation and ignorance, veil of ignorance, this aspect was severely criticized by these communitarians. Walzer, Sandel, Taylor, and McIntyre. You can add McIntyre also. All these four people in 1980s criticized John Rawls. So John Rawls gave his concept in 1971. After that, these four people, Michael Walzer, Michael Sandel, and Taylor, Charles Taylor, and McIntyre. McIntyre in his book After Virtue, Michael Walzer in Spheres of Justice, Sandel, Liberalism and Limits of Justice. All these people criticized John Rawls for his atomistic understanding of individuals. So communitarians argue that individuals cannot be understood in the context of complete separation from community. The role of community is there, and we have to understand that. Man is situated self, man is very much in the society or community. Culture affects, culture, community issues, community mindset also matter in the individual's life. So they talk about community oriented rights rather than individualistic understanding of right. So Michael Walzer gave the famous concept of spheres of justice. You can mention spheres of justice. that is complex equality also. Complex equality. Walzer, Michael Walzer argued that there cannot be one principle of justice or universal principle of justice. We have to understand different spheres of justice. Within sphere also there can be different principles of justice. The principles which are applied, which can be valid in the family sphere, cannot be valid in other sphere like political sphere or business sphere. We have to find out different principles for different spheres. That only in that way only we can have stable society. So this is communitarian's understanding of principles of justice. You can mention complex equality, etc. But complex equality is good, fine, no issue, but it is very tough to bring that. It is again very utopia, idealism, or even Walzer has not given any specific concrete program to bring that complex equality. You can conclude on that line. Understood? Okay, that is communitarianism. Next question. Examine the critics of Marxism. 15 marks. Directly start with Marxism. Critics of Marxism. Marxism is an ideology based on Karl Marx ideas and other scholars. Marxism and Karl Marx, of course, are close, but they are not the same thing. Okay. In Marxism, different people added different ideas. But yes, Marxism is basically based on ideas of Karl Marx. It stands for communism, that is classless and stateless society. And it talks about freedom, that is freedom from wants. So we have different notions of Marxism: orthodox Marxism, and neo-Marxism. Orthodox Marxism, Karl Marx himself, mature Marx, Lenin, Mao, all these people you can mention. Neo-Marxist, Gramsci, and other critical schools theorists, Habermas and all those people you can mention. Now, we have to discuss critique of Marxism. Then you can directly start. After the introduction, you can start with Karl Marx's idea of class struggle, revolution, bringing communism, bourgeois society, proletariat revolution, etc. So this was also changed by, even Marx's ideas were criticized or modified by the Marxist people like Lenin. Lenin brought many new ideas in the revolution or Marx's original ideas. And Marx's original ideas were criticized by liberals also, like Max Weber. Marx talks about two classes, have and have nots. So he completely rejected middle classes. So Max Weber talks about presence of middle classes, which was very dominant right now or at that time also. Then Lenin made many changes in the original Marxism. Even Mao made many changes in the Marxism, and they brought communism like in China and Russia or USSR. So those were also criticized by within Marxism and outside. Marx believed that once we establish proletariat revolution or dictatorship of proletarians, communism will come, and communism is stateless and classless society. But what happened? In the communist Russia or USSR or China, state became strong, classes still continue, rich and poor people still, these are the features of the communist societies. State will wither away according to Marx, but state became very prominent in both the communist states, even in Cuba. So Marxist, within Marxist as well as outside, Marxism was criticized. And in that context emerged new school in Marxism, that is neo-Marxism, gave under the influence of Gramsci. Now these neo-Marxists criticized Orthodox because Orthodox Marxists believed in the political Marx, mature Marx, communist revolution, violence, and etc. So this neo-Marxist critical school theorists were saying that Marx was humanist also, and they gave ideas like freedom, one-dimensional man, and etc. So this Marxism was criticized by within Marxists and outside also. So that you can mention. Marxism was very prominent idea and still that is very prominent idea. Though Marxist ideas remained utopia, many ideas like we can say communism or freedom, but still Marxism holds the ground, at least to make capitalism more inclusive, humanistic in nature. That can be your conclusion. In the context of rising inequality, you can mention Thomas Piketty, rising inequality in the world under the globalizations, and etc. Fine. So this is Marxism. Next question: is Gramsci a theoretician of superstructure? Give reasons in support of your answer. Okay. Gramsci, as I said, just was neo-Marxist. He is considered as the father of neo-Marxism. In his book, Prison Notebook, he altered, he modified many Marxist ideas, and because of that, he is considered as theoretician of superstructure by N. Bobbio. Fine. Okay. Marx gave base superstructure model. Base superstructure model. That is, economy was base, and other structures are just reflection of that base. Just reflection of that base. Economy was the basic or foundation. Politics, society, culture, all are superstructures. And superstructure, they are just superstructure, they're just reflection. They have no autonomy. That is base superstructure model of Marx. So Marx gave complete supremacy to the basic structure, that is economy. So he reduced everything to the economy. That's why it is also known as economic reductionism or determinism. Everything comes to the economy. Others are just reflection, according to Karl Marx. And Marx predicted that once we capture the base, that is economy, other structure will collapse and we will bring communism. That was his prediction. But that was his utopia. And Marx predicted that communism will come, communist society, first communist society will come in the capitalist society. Capitalist society. This never happened because communist state emerged but in 1917, but in agricultural society like Russia. And many capitalist states continued their existence. So Gramsci was, we can say, he was concerned why Marx's prediction failed to come into existence. So he studied Marxism once again and he made some modification under the influence of Italian scholar Benedetto Croce. According to Gramsci, Marx neglected the role of superstructures, that is, civil society, culture, in the maintenance of system of economic or capitalist people. So Gramsci gave importance to the superstructure and he modified Karl Marx's base superstructure model. He said that yes, base is there, that is economy, but between base and state there is another structure, that is civil society. And this civil society creates hegemony for the capitalist class. Capitalist class. This hegemony is created by organic intellectuals and other institutions, family, church, etc. Civil society uses soft power, and through consent, this civil society creates consent, develops consent in favor of capitalism or capitalist society. That's why the capitalist societies still hold the ground, unlike agricultural society or feudal societies. So this is opaque state, opaque state. There is direct relation, there is no direct relation between base and state here. There is civil society. But if you see Russia at that time, feudal society or agricultural society, civil society was absent, base and state directly in contact. So it was easy to throw away the state and capture the power. But in the capitalist society, that is not going to happen, because civil society is there and civil society creates the hegemony for the capitalism. So Gramsci said that culture, norms, values which are part of superstructure are very important to understand the dominance of the Western or the capitalist system. That's why he gives maximum importance to the superstructures, which Marx failed to give. That's why he is rightly called as theoretician of superstructure. Unlike Karl Marx, Gramsci proposed two-stage revolution. Marx predicted that revolution will automatically come, that is, class in itself will become class for itself, and violent revolution will be there and communism will come. But Gramsci said that that is not going to happen. We have to fight at two levels: war of position and war of maneuver. So first we have to capture this civil society through creation, through the counter hegemony, organic intellectual, social bloc, historical bloc, etc. And then we have to capture the state apparatus through violence. So he proposed two-stage revolution. So in that way, Gramsci modified Marxism or Karl Marx ideas, and he saved Karl Marx or Marxist ideas from crude economic determinism or reductionism. So that can be your conclusion. Understood? So yes, certainly we can say that Gramsci is theoretician of superstructure. There is no doubt about that. Though later on, Althusser criticized Gramsci for the neglect of base and etc. Althusser was saying that yes, culture, other institutions are important, but base is very important. But he also understands culture is very important. Althusser, you can mention if you want in the body part. Fine. Next question. Enumerate and discuss the key tenets of the neoliberal view of the state. Okay, neoliberal view of state. Features of neoliberal view of state. That is the simple understanding of the question. Neoliberal state. You can start with concept of state, very central concept. Gettel and Gardner. Political science starts and ends with state. It is the key, or it is the main context, main content in the political science. Gettel, Gardner. Then neoliberal state, this concept became prominent in the context of welfare state. Understand? Okay. You can just understand this chronology. First, classical liberals provided laissez-faire state. Adam Smith. No role for the state in economy or market. Market is God. Invisible hand of Adam Smith. Because of that excessive liberty to market, some issues emerged. Marxism became prominent, or Marxist ideas became prominent. To counter these ideas, liberalism evolved and positive liberals came into existence. Positive liberals came into existence like T.H. Green. And economy in the 20th century, we have John Keynes. So they supported role for the state in the market, in the creation of demand and supply. So welfare state became the norm by 1940s. 1950s in the world. In many Western world, welfare state was the feature. That is the positive role for the state in the society, in the economy. The state can create demand, supply, etc. under the influence of Keynes' idea. Because of this welfare state was taking care of everything from birth to death, and state became nanny state according to neoliberals. This neoliberal ideology is reincarnation of classical liberalism of Adam Smith. This idea was proposed by neoliberal scholars in 1950s, 60s, 70s by Hayek, Milton Friedman, and Nozick. These three people proposed neoliberal state, that is once again classical state, classical liberalism, that is no role for the state in the economy or market. Market is God, market will stable automatically. If state creates artificial demands and supply, that will not going to help. Market will take care of itself. So they oppose the role of state in the economy. According to them, it is authoritarian then. If we give power to the state, state becomes authoritarian, and that is very big challenge for the liberty, according to Milton Friedman. So liberty can only be enjoyed in the capitalism, and capitalism requires absence of state in the market. So they are having issue with state presence in the economy or market. So neoliberals countered this welfare state, and they once again proposed market freedom, market-based economy. Then they provided, we can say, theory of justice like Nozick. According to Nozick, the state must not intervene in the individual's life. It is individual's duty, individual's arena, entitlement theory of justice. Okay, so you can mention Nozick also. And they said that the social justice is mirage. Social justice is farce, it is myth, it is not going to happen. So Hayek said that planning is road to serfdom, it is not going to give justice to the people. So this Milton Friedman night watchman state, state's job is to maintain law and order, nothing more than that, just to maintain regulations in the context of taxation and etc. No maximum role to the state, minimal state, night watchman state is the feature of neoliberal state. Fine. So this is enumeration and discuss the key tenets of the neoliberal view of the state. Understood? Fine. So you can mention all these people. Then later on you can mention Washington Consensus and etc. Williamson, Washington Consensus. Washington Consensus in 1980s. That is, state must control fiscal deficit. State should restrict subsidies, free movement of people, goods, that is globalization. So all those features are there in Washington Consensus. That is also feature of neoliberal state. Then IMF also use these policies in its structural adjustment programs, World Bank also. That is, we can add in the answer. This is all about neoliberalism, neoliberal concept of state. Fine. So there is no critical evaluation. Question is just asking enumerate and discuss. So you can skip that particular part. Next question. Critically examine Hannah Arendt's conception of modernity. Again, you can start with Hannah Arendt's heterodox thinker, thinking without barrier. She is she promotes civic republicanism. Okay, You can mention her books on human condition, on totalitarianism, on violence in the introduction if you want. Any of the book you can mention in the introduction. We all know that Hannah Arendt gave her concepts of modernity, freedom, freedom in the context of her understanding of totalitarian states, Stalin and Hitler. Her main concern was totalitarian state emerged because man lost his significant role in the society, that is civic participation. Civic participation. And because of that, state controls everything through propaganda, myths, and then force also. So based on myths, ideology, and force, state controls everything, and state becomes totalitarianism, rise of totalitarianism in her book. And why this gap is there, that vacuum, why that vacuum was there? That is, man has lost interest in the civic affairs, and this was happened because of modernity, modern science or modernity. Modernity has given maximum importance to the economic sphere, that is materialism, and everyone is just having money, economic prosperity, and etc. The people have lost their true nature, that is social, political animal, etc. So according to Hannah Arendt, if we want to capture or recapture our freedom, we have to give our maximum attention to the civic participation. So that is power for Hannah Arendt, that is man working together or people working together, that is acting in concert. That is her understanding of power. And modernity has restricted that. So she criticized modernity. Similar thoughts are also given by Mahatma Gandhi. Modernity as such is not wrong, but modern ideas like, we can say, materialism, excessive use of machines, and through that consumerism, these aspects have killed the critical thinking of human beings. Okay, and human beings just became slave of modernity. So she has criticized modernity just because modernity has killed the people's participation in the civic or political affairs. But all these views are not correct. Modernity has some features, also good features, rationality, okay, science, scientific temper. So that also you have to recognize in the conclusion. Of course, you can appreciate Hannah Arendt for her concerns for the civic republicanism, but one cannot neglect the positives of modernity, that is rationalism and scientific temper. Right? Next question. What do you mean by obligation? What do you mean by obligation? Examine the place of obligation in political theory. Again, this is last year also there was one question on legitimacy and obligation. Obligation, again, it is very debatable topic in the political science. Why, how, when to obey the law made by the state or the government. That is the concern of obligation. I owe obligation, or why should I obey the state? To owe obedience. That is the main concern of obligation. Obligation. That is to bind or to perform duty. That is simple definition of obligation. Okay. To contract towards the government, to agreement towards agreement. That is obligation in simple terms. So this obligation has different meanings or different types. Obligation, that is duty or binding to oneself to agreement, state, government. Why to, or one should follow the rule, laws made by the state. That is obligation in political science. So obligation has different features or types also: moral obligation, legal obligation, and political obligation. Political obligation. You can write moral, legal, and political obligation. For our understanding, political obligation is important. Just focus on these two words, moral and legal, briefly, and then come to the political obligation. Political obligation means duties of the citizens or the people. Moral obligation means it is your morality which dictates you whether you have to follow particular norm or not. That is morality. Legal means you have to follow laws made by the state. Doesn't matter whether that law is correct or not. That is legal obligation. Suppose states wants to take 100 rupees from you out of tax, so you have to pay that. That is legal obligation. We are obliged to obey the state. That is obligation, legal obligation. If you are not obeying that, the state will punish you. That is legal obligation. Political obligation is next step of legal obligation. It does not mean ki only you have to follow the law. You have to, we can say, revolt against the unjust law also. That is the meaning of political obligation. So political obligation has two connotations or the two meanings. On the one side, you have to follow the state, you have to follow the duties in the state, rules, you have to follow the laws. That is fine. But if the system is unjust, if system is not giving justice to the people, you have to protest against the state or the government or the rule. That also comes under the political obligation. That is important. So these are different types of obligations: moral, legal, and political obligation. That you can understand, that you can write in the answer. So your first part is what do you mean by obligation? So obligation, that is to owe obedience towards the state, towards the government, towards the law, and legal, moral, and political obligations. Now, next point, examine the place of obligation in political theory. Now, this is debatable. This is again very broad topic. There are different theories as far as this obligation is concerned. We all know that, just we have to pick up those points. Already we have discussed in many topics obligation differently, in different ways or indirectly. So as far as place of obligation is concerned in the political theory, we have different, we can say, perspective. First is unlimited obligation. Understand, this is again very important. There is one school who project unlimited obligation from the people towards the state. We are talking about right now political obligation, as I said. Come to the main point, political obligation. Second school is limited obligation. Limited obligation by the people. And third, against political obligation. Third school is, there are people who don't think we should follow the state, against political obligation. So all these things you can mention your answer. Unlimited obligation means there are people who believe that people should follow state completely because state is good for you. You can mention divine theory of rights here, divine theory of state. Okay, so king can do no wrong. So this divine theory of state demanded unlimited obligation, political obligation from the people. People must not question anything. People just follow, just obey, just pay to the state. That is unlimited obligation. Then come limited obligation, social contracts theories. Social contract theorists like Hobbes and Locke. Social contracts theories, limited obligation, Locke and Hobbes. Locke was saying, or Hobbes said that yes, state can have absolute power, but if state fails to protect you or your personal life or right to life, definitely you can revolt against the state. So that is limited obligation of the people. Locke went further and said that the state is minimal. So there is no complete authority of the state. State is minimal. So only powers which are transferred by the people to the state has right in that area only. Other areas are free to the people. Basic fundamental rights are there for the people, natural rights. That is limited obligation. You can mention social contracts. But there are people who believe that we must not follow the state. The state is not there for your welfare, but it is for your exploitation. That is Marxist understanding. The state is an instrument of bourgeois class. You can remove that state and bring the communism. You can mention Marxist. You can mention even anarchist in against political obligation. Anarchist wale. Okay. Proudhon. They anarchists talk about non-existence of state. We must not follow the state. State is against the individual's liberty, individual's creation. So anarchist also against the political obligation. You can mention Gandhians also, Gandhism in that. But Gandhi was saying that we should disobey, that is civil disobedience, unjust law, like salt satyagraha. So Gandhi was against laws which are unjust. So that is, you cannot remain neutral in the context of unjust law. So he was saying that you can disobey, you cannot remain silent if law is unjust. So you can mention Gandhi. So if you see this concept, political obligation is very complex, and there are different views as far as this political obligation is concerned. But conclude with balance attitude. That means yes, the people should have rights to protest against the political system if that system is unjust, but that should not be your regular feature. You should obey the state or laws, but if law is unjust, you should protest also. You can give once again example of Bangladesh. The state was unjust, it was not democratic, people revolted and government collapsed. That is political obligation. You can conclude. Understood? Fine. Next question, section B. Section B. Quickly. Contextualize the water and territorial disputes. Yes. Contextualize the water and territorial disputes in relation to federalism in India. Federation in India. Fine. Okay. We all know that water and territorial disputes are there in the country. So this unfinished business of federalism. Question is asking, give the context of territorial disputes and water disputes and territorial disputes in the context of federation or federalism. So you have to give some constitutional features of federation. So features of federation, and those features are considered as the reasons for the unsettled issues like water disputes and territorial disputes. So you can mention in the context of water, we have federal structure or federal system created by 7th schedule. So in the 7th schedule we have different list, state list and union list. So as far as this water is concerned, water knows no border. The federation has established two systems in the context of water. As far as union is concerned, it has 56 list. First entry is 56, where the union has power to control interstate water issue, interstate rivers and etc. And as far as the domestic within states are concerned, it has state list second, that is entry number 17, where states have complete power in the context of the state, within the state. So this creates issue in the context of water disputes. So states are saying that we have responsibility towards the people of the state, and water is issue of livelihood, okay, life. So many times this interstate rivers issue becomes federal issue because of this structural issues in the constitution. Entries, state list versus union list. So we have many disputes, water disputes like Krishna river water disputes, Kaveri water disputes, then we have Narmada water, then we have Satluj water disputes. All those water disputes because of some issues among the states and state central government's role also through the 56, entry number 56. And we have articles like Article 262, which empowers Parliament to make laws in the context of interstate water, and Parliament has made laws in 1956, Interstate Water Disputes Act and River Board Acts, and even this article bars Supreme Court from the litigations and tribunals, establishment of tribunals. But we all know that people go, or the state goes to the Supreme Court under Article 131 or Article 136, and because of that, even having many tribunals, we haven't resolved many water disputes. Still, Kaveri water dispute is there, Krishna water dispute is there. Because of all these federal issues, water disputes are still there. As far as territorial issues are concerned, disputes, still we have some states, regions where territorial disputes are there. For example, Maharashtra and Karnataka, Belgaum and other areas. This is again in the context of State Reorganization Act, okay, 1956, language based, but some parts were given to Karnataka, Marathi speaking, and some parts were there in Maharashtra also, Kannada speaking. So this created conflict or dispute between the federal structure. That part you can mention. Then 1966, Punjab, Haryana and Chandigarh issue. It was then 1985 Punjab Accord. In that it was settled that Chandigarh will be given to the Punjab, but that has not happened, and still that issue is there. So you can mention those issues because of this federal structure or context of federation. Understood? This is you have to mention. Next question. Critically examine the implications of inclusion of fundamental duties in the Constitution of India. Yesterday itself we have discussed this question, almost similar lines. Nature of fundamental duties in the Constitution. You can start with fundamental duties, very simple. 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, 10 fundamental duties, then one added 19 or 86 Constitutional Amendment Act, etc. Introduction, fine. Implications, we can say fundamental duties are having different natures like civic duties, political duties, environmental duties, scientific duties, moral duties. Okay, so these duties are not compulsory, these are not enforceable, so these are voluntary, but moral force is there, and our enjoyment of fundamental duties, our enjoyment of fundamental rights is not dependent on our fundamental duties, performance of fundamental duties, but the state can make provisions to give effect to the fundamental duties, and the Supreme Court can use the provisions in the fundamental duties while interpreting the laws. Or if state makes any law, that is union government, the Supreme Court can make that valid on the basis of this list, fundamental duties. So these are the implications of adding fundamental duties to the Constitution. Gandhian philosophy you can mention in the conclusion, just we have discussed in the first section. What impact have the elections in India had on the weaker sections of the society? Again, elections and weaker sections of the society. Elections and weaker sections of the society. Weaker sections here, SCs, STs, minorities and women. You can add. So electoral democracy, we have electoral democracy, first past the post system. Fine. Because of that, there is race for the vote, like as proposed by Schumpeter, elitist theory of democracy. Now every political party wants to create vote bank, and because of that they started appealing the masses for targeting the people, especially weaker sections. So if you see the history of Indian elections, earlier weaker sections means basically poor and rich. In the context of it was class based, rich and poor basically. Of course constitutional mandate was there for the weaker sections like scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Apart from that, class oriented elections were there, like rich, poor, and in that context, Indira Gandhi gave the concept of Garibi Hatao in 1971 general elections, and many pro-poor policies were launched to target the poor people of the country. So those policies influence the weaker sections, especially poor, okay, across the strata. So you can mention various pro-poor schemes in that context, food security, TDS scheme, and etc. Though it was earlier there, but in full swing, many pro-poor schemes were launched. In that way, it affected the marginalized sections of the society. Then, of course, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, those you can mention, that was constitutionally mandated, reservation, etc. You can mention Rajni Kothari. Okay, secularization of caste, politics became secular in the context of, or caste became secular. That is use of caste for the secular purpose. Secular purpose means benefits, government's benefits, schemes, and etc. So in that way, elections also impacted the weaker sections. To garner, to take votes of all these sections, political parties started adding schemes or provisions in their manifestos, and after coming to the office, they started schemes to give effect those to those. So in that way, elections certainly impacted the weaker sections of the society. You can mention Aam Aadmi Party also in the recent past, that Aam Aadmi Party phenomena. Okay. In the recent past, we have reservations for the women, 106th Constitutional Amendment Act, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. As I said earlier, women, this constituency was neglected by the people, by the political parties, because within the families, women used to follow the male counterparts while performing their voting and etc. But in the recent past, this constituency became very unique and distinct women constituency. So all political parties are focusing on that women constituency. So that's why we have reservations, 106 Constitutional Amendment Act. In many states, we will find that direct benefit schemes are launched in the interest of women. Okay, in Maharashtra, in Madhya Pradesh, okay, Ladki Bahin Yojana, etc. That is giving direct 2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees. In Delhi also, that kind of scheme was proposed by Aam Aadmi Party, even BJP. So that is impact of elections on the weaker sections of the society. It has positives and negatives also. Positive, of course, schemes are there, but what we required, complete or holistic empowerment, not just this rhetorics and populist measures. That is what we require for the healthy democracy. Understood? Next question. What impact have the elections that we have completed? Okay. What 5D, write short note on women's movement in post-colonial period. Last year also there was one question. Women's movement in post-colonial period. Here post-colonial period means Indian context, not global context. Okay. Question is from IGP, so you should understand that it is related to India. Short note, women's movement. So post-independence, 1950s to 1970s, this era was considered as grey area or era because women movements were absent, because people were having some expectations from the state. The state will give justice to the woman. But in 1974, towards equality report published, and in that it became clear that there are certain gender related issues. Many atrocities, cases of atrocities also in 1970s, Mathura rape case and all that. And women movement became prominent after that 1970s. In the context of livelihood and etc. Uh, Chipko movement 1970s, in that also women participated. Anti-Iraq movement in Andhra Pradesh against liquor. Then for political rights like reservations, women movement became prominent. And we had 73rd and 74th and then right now 106th Constitutional Amendment Act. Me Too movement in the context of sexual harassments, Vishaka guidelines and then laws, Domestic Violence Act, etc. So all those you can mention in the context of women movement and their achievements. But there are certain issues in the context of women movements. You can add scholars. According to feminist scholars, women movements are divided across the caste, region, and religion also. Usha Thakkar and all those you can mention. They Sudape, they are saying that there is absence of pan-India movement, and women movements are divided across caste, religion, and region. Okay, that is right short note on women's movements in post-colonial period. Then 5E, should first past post the system be replaced with proportional representation system? This is again hypothetical, debatable issue. It is argumentative. I mean, right now we have first past the post system for the parliament and state legislatures. I mean, state legislative assembly. Okay, parliament in the sense Lok Sabha at the union level. Fine. And at local levels also, but Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly. First past the post system. You can define with, you can come with FATP system and etc. You can mention Duverzer's law also. Duverzer predicted that wherever there is FATP, there will be two-party system, and two parties will control the government alternatively. And wherever there is PR system, there will be multi-party system. That was his prediction. But India proved wrong. We have FATP, but we have multi-party system right now. Initially, it was one-party system. Now, there are certain issues. We accepted FPTP in the context of familiarity of FPTP and simple. It is very simple. In 1950s, that is in the context of Constituent Assembly and debate. FPTP has some good features also, positives, but it has some lacunas, weaknesses. It does not reflect will of the people in true sense. That means we all know that if someone wants to get elected, that person might not require 50% vote, that is majority vote, in the FPTP system. Suppose there are 3 candidates and 1 vacancy is there. Suppose 3 people are running that for that particular post. One person gets 40% vote, another gets 20%, 25%, and remaining will be for the third person. That means if that 40% person, that person will get elected. No requirement of full majority or absolute majority. This is the issue with FPTP. And if you see the trends right now, if you see last elections, in 2019, BJP got, we can say around 36% votes, but it got 303 votes. Congress got around 20% votes, but it got 52 votes. So that difference is very prominent. There are many political parties who got 40% vote, but got 0 seats. I mean, you can take the example of in southern India, in DMK, AIA, DMK context, very close battles. Many times in Andhra Pradesh also, you can see shift. Sometimes Telugu Desam party gets around 20 seats, but gets vote 40%. Okay. Jagan Reddy gets around 45% votes but gets 80% seats. This is happening because of FETP. So FETP has some disadvantages, lacunas, and because of that, people are arguing that we should shift towards the PR system, that is proportional representation. PR system, what is PR system? That means whatever will be your share, vote share, you will get in that proportion in the assembly or the Lok Sabha. Suppose a party gets 50% or 40% votes. So 40% seats will be given to that party in the assembly of the Lok Sabha. If you get say 20%, so 20% seats will be given to that party. So it has also some negatives, that is it will create coalition governments and etc etc. So there are positives in both the system and negatives in the both the system. What is balance? So people are arguing that at least we should try mixed method or mixed type. That is, some seats will be from the FETP system and some still will be from the PR system. That is like Germany. So we can say around 70% seats will be from the FETP and 30% seats will be from the PR, whatever it may be. Even SY Qureshi also argues the same. Okay, we should have that kind of experiment just to correct this particular mismatch in the context of FET. You can mention that. Understood? Okay, next question. The jurisdiction and powers of the Supreme Court of India are in their nature and extent wider than those exercised by the highest court of any other country. The question is saying that the powers of the Supreme Court of India are very prominent, that in other countries you will not get that kind of powers to the Supreme Courts. Fine. That is logical, that is again mentioned in the Constitution. If you see the Supreme Court of India, okay, Article 124 to 147, Supreme Court, as said by Nehru, has role to play in the development of the country. It cannot be mute spectator, and it is important for the democratic setup, because this democratic setup is based on separation of power. Montesquieu, legislature, executive, and judiciary. And the Constitution has maintained that independence of judiciary through various provisions. And role of the Supreme Court is to protect the fundamental rights and custodian of the Constitution itself. Yesterday we have discussed one question on this particular. Now, to give effect to these two principles or to these main functions of the Supreme Court, to protect the fundamental rights and custodian of the Constitution, there are features, there are provisions in the Constitution which gives full effect to the Supreme Court to enable it to give effect to these main functions. And these powers are so solid that this kind of powers are not present in other countries. You can compare with USA or United Kingdom. UK has no written constitution, but yes, UK has rule of law. So yes, there is Supreme Court or court in the UK which has powers. You can compare with that, or you can compare any other country like Canada, etc. For our understanding, we can take example UK or USA. So in USA also there is Supreme Court, Federal Court, and it has some constitutional duties, the protection of Constitution. But there is also some, we can say, issues with the Supreme Court of the USA, control or the power of president to appoint the judges and etc. And so we can say president has maximum powers in the United States. But if you see the Supreme Court of India, earlier Constitution has given enough grounds, enough provisions to protect the fundamental rights and Constitution. That is one aspect. And later on, once Constitution started its journey, Supreme Court also invented some features which gave powers to the Supreme Court and became one of the supreme or the powerful court in the country. So you can mention that. Okay. First, Article 13, Article 32, we can say Article 142. So all these articles give powers, functions to the Supreme Court to protect the fundamental rights and constitution also. Yesterday we have discussed in the context of tussle between fundamental rights and DPSP, Supreme Court acquired supreme power in the context of amendments through the Keshwananda Bharati case Basic Structure Doctrine 1973. So literally this Basic Structure Doctrine is pure invention of Supreme Court. It was nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. And what is right now situation? The Parliament of India cannot amend basic structure of the Constitution. And what is basic structure? It is Supreme Court. It is up to the Supreme Court to decide that. Supreme Court of India has many times struck down the constitutional amendments also, like 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, total removal, struck down. Even some features of 42nd, 38th and etc. those were also removed by the Supreme Court by using doctrines like judicial review and protection of fundamental rights under Article 32. This Article 142 has been used by Supreme Court many times to deliver complete justice to the people. The judiciary has invented new concepts like due process of law within the legal sphere in our country, because in the original constitution we have procedure established by law, Article 21, but in Maneka Gandhi case Supreme Court has said that we can use due process of law also, PIR and all that you can mention. So if you see, the Supreme Court of India has many powers because the Constitution has envisaged Supreme Court as the protector of fundamental rights and the custodian of Constitution. So you can mention that. Understood? That is correct. Fine. Even you can mention appointment also. That part also you can mention in the context of appointments in the higher judiciary, that is Supreme Court. Appointment of the judges in the Supreme Court. Earlier it was President of India who had control in the appointments, and President President had consultations with the Chief Justice of India, and after that President can appoint person to the Supreme Court. But later on, through 3 judges case in 1980s and 90s, Supreme Court is established that the President can appoint a person in the judiciary, that is higher judiciary, after consulting collegium, and collegium system got established. That is Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges in the Supreme Court. And this collegium suggests name to the President, and President appoint that person to the judiciary. So this system, collegium system, is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution, but still that is there. It is again judiciary's powers. Okay. So by using all these powers, judiciary often becomes active, that is judicial activism, or sometimes overreach also. So this is the nature of our judiciary. You can discuss this part. You can mention scholars, Bhikhu Parekh, judicial co-governance, P.B. Mehta, criticism, then Markandeya Kajju, justice, Jia Modi. You can mention all these people while discussing your answer. Okay. Judicial co-governance, Bhikhu Parekh, you can mention. Next question, discuss the pattern of political parties from one dominant party system to coalition politics in national politics. Okay, party system, you can start with party system. You can quote Sartori, you can quote Edmund Burke, you can quote Max Weber while introducing your answer in political parties. Okay. Party system. Question is asking, discuss the pattern of political parties from one dominant party system to coalition politics in national politics. Okay. As I said, you can start with quote from Edmund Burke on political party, Max Weber powerhouses, Sartori, etc., etc. Okay, fine. Then, as far as party system in India is concerned, You can start with Congress system, Rajni Kothari, one party dominance system. From 1951 to 1967, Congress system got collapsed. It collapsed, and rise of regional parties at the local level, at the regional level, though Congress maintained its supremacy or dominance at the national level. But this national level politics also suffered setback in 1977 post in emergency, and at national level also Janata Party came to power. Congress was removed, and this Janata Party was mixed. We can say it was first experiment at the national level. Though party was Janata Party was one party, but within that many political parties were there. We all know that. So that was Janata Party, but Janata Party experiment failed. When soon we had elections in 1980, once again Congress became prominent. Congress came to power, and post 1984, after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, Congress became hegemonic party once again for brief period because it got 414 seats in Lok Sabha. That was the highest number. But because of some issues, Congress declined, and in 1989 Congress got less than 200 seats. That is precisely, I think, 197 seats. And from that onwards, we had coalition governments at the national level. From 1989 to 1999, we had 5 general elections and coalition politics at the national level and regional levels also. In many regional or the regions or the states, regional political parties became powerful. Samajwadi Parivar divided, Samajwadi Party, RJD, all those people came out and they formed their own parties. And many parties, these Samajwadis were ruling in Odisha, Biju Patnaik, in Karnataka, Deve Gowda, in Bihar, Lalu Prasad Yadav, in Uttar Pradesh, Samajwadi Party. All those Samajwadis were ruling. In West Bengal, other political parties became prominent like Trinamool Congress and all that. So from this 1989, after the decline of Congress, the coalition politics became norm at the national level. You can mention MP Singh, you can mention Suhas Parshikar, you can mention Ashutosh Varshney to justify your answer while discussing all these points in the party system. Okay. From that was unstable coalition. That was unstable coalition. Catch-all parties system became prominent post 1999. Post 1999, Atal Bihari Vajpayee established the first successful coalition governments, which completed its tenure from 1999 to 2004. So in that coalition, that was Rainbow Coalition. Rainbow Coalition. Many political parties were there. Around 30 political parties were part of that Vajpayee government. After that, coalition politics became mature in our country. From 1999 to 2014, technically, we had coalition governments at the national level. In 2014, once again, one party became dominant, that is BJP. BJP got more than 283 seats. Once again, it became one party dominant system. So Suhas Parshikar argues that this is BJP system. You can mention BJP system because in successive elections in 2014 and 2019, the BJP got absolute majority. In 14, 283 seats. In 2019, 303 seats. So that is supreme majority. But once again in 2024, we had coalition governments. That is BJP got 240 seats and other parties, regional parties got some share, and right now we have one party dominant but coalition governments at the central level. Though BJP is in the complete control, but it is still coalition governments. Earlier also in 2014-19, coalitions were there, means coalition partners were there, but of course we all know that BJP was in the complete control because it had majority. Right now BJP has 240 seats. Certainly it has to take support of few parties, that is TDP and Nitish Kumar. So once again we have coalition pattern at the national level. So you can mention that in your answer. Fine. Okay. Next question. How do directive principles substantiate the rights already assured by the fundamental rights. How do directive principles substantiate the rights already as assured by the fundamental rights? Okay, question. I am reading. Directive principles and fundamental rights. We have to show the connection between the fundamental rights and DPSP. We all know that. You can start with fundamental rights and DPSPs. Austin, cornerstone, constitution as a cornerstone. Or Supreme Court in Maneka Gandhi, Milrewa Mill case, fundamental rights and DPSPs are soul of the constitution. We cannot isolate them or separate them. And question is asking, how do directive principles substantiate the rights already assured by the fundamental rights? Okay, so we have fundamental rights from article, we can say provisions from 12 to 35 part 3, and we have 6 fundamental rights, 14 to 19, 14 to 18, 19 to 22, 23 to 24, 25 to 28, then 29 to 30, and article 32. Okay, so there are various rights like equality before law, abolition of untouchability, abolition of titles, freedom of speech and expression, in reservation in the context of weaker section, then article 21, right to life, 23, 24, exploitation and human trafficking, 25, 28, religious rights, 29, 30, cultural rights, educational rights. And DPSPs, we have article 36 to 51. Because why this is important? Because we have to find out provisions of DPSP which have effect on the fundamental rights, directly, indirectly. So article 12 to 35 envisages political democracy, equality before law, equal opportunity, etc. But that is not sufficient. We have to create socio-economic equality. And there are certain rights, there are certain provisions in the DPSP like Article 38 and 39, Article 46, which give power to the state to make policies in the interest of weaker sections, to minimize inequality, to minimize poverty, and to establish the egalitarian society which is required for the enjoyment of fundamental rights. So there are certain provisions in the DPSP which substantiate rights already assured by the fundamental rights. Okay, but this connection should be there. Without having these avenues, we cannot enjoy our fundamental rights. Okay. Then you can mention right to life. Right to life covers everything, like right to live with dignity, right to have complete say in your personal life, right to privacy. But to that, you should be economically, socially empowered. And DPSP have all these provisions of DPSP. They have some provisions related to your social well-being, community rights, and etc. So that is also requirement. Then we can say कि fundamental rights are there in the context of DPS, religious rights 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29, 30. So these are also required for the, we can say, stable society. Welfare of the people is also concern of these rights. You have UCC, which also secular provision, and all these 25 to 28 and 29, 30 are also secular provisions. So you can find out connections between fundamental rights and directive principles, but they are mentioned separately. Context, we know that fundamental rights are justiciable, they are enforceable in the court, and DPSP are not. At the time of framing constitution, we had issue of resources, so some rights were added in the DPSP. So these are non-enforceable rights, and enforceable rights are added in the fundamental rights. So you can mention all those in your answer. Understood? Fine. Next question. Critically examine the role of governor in India's federal structure. Already we have discussed yesterday this question. Okay. Role of governor in India's federal structure. No need to mention here. One second. Governor. Role of governor in India's federal structure. Appointed by the center. Context was partition of India. We wanted to maintain our integrity. So central central government's representation was needed at the state level. So we created office of the governor, and governor has certain constitutional and situational powers or discretions. Article 163, Article 200, Article 356. So that is, just understand in the context of federal structure. So governor can send bills passed by the state legislature to the president under Article 200, Article 356. The state can be under president rules once governor send that report to the president. So that is federal issue. You can mention scholar yesterday's like Soli Sorabji, Dr. Manmohan Singh, all those people, P.B. Mehta, recent Supreme Court judgment, all those issues you can mention already. Yesterday we have discussed. Next question, examine the role of National Commission for Minorities in preserving, promoting and protecting the rights of minorities in India. Yesterday, again, same question was there on minorities, but question nature was different. Question was functions and structure of National Commission for Minorities. In the question, we had to discuss structure and functions of National Commission for Minorities. It was established in 1992, Act 1993, composition 5+2, that is 7 members. Out of that, 5 are from minority sections, 6 minorities, and etc. 18.8% population. All that facts you can mention. National Commission for Minorities. Here, question nature of question is different. Examine the role of National Commission for Minorities in preserving, promoting and protecting the rights of minorities. So you have to study, you have to analyze, you have to discuss the role or the track record of National Commission for Minorities. So you can mention research, visits, protection, some case studies, in the context of lynching and all that, you can mention that. Then while framing policies in the interest of minorities, the Minority Commission needed to be consulted by the state. So you can mention Minority Commission gives reports. Those reports need to be studied, discussed, and reasons should be given to the people ki why these policies are not accepted or why accepted, etc. So these kind of powers are there with the Minority Commission. But again, some lacunas are there. We know that it lacks constitutional backing. Again, overlapping is there. Many commissions are there. National Commission for Women, National Commission for Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribes, or National Commission for Human Rights. So all these commissions are there. Already commissions are there. So usme bhi aur ek commission. So there are issues with the overlapping of the mandates. So that's why still this National Commission for Minorities has not worked as envisaged by the Act of 1992. You can mention that. Then analyze the role of caste in electoral politics. Yesterday itself we have discussed same question around same. What are the determinants of electoral behavior in Indian politics and role of caste. Yesterday we have discussed that caste. You can mention scholars Rajni Kotari, Ashutosh Varsne, Yogendra Yadav, Rudolph and Rudolph. All these people you can mention. C.P. Bhamri as a critic, Professor C.P. Bhamri as a critic. You can mention Rajni Kotari in support, Yogendra Yadav in support. All these people you can mention identity politics. I think we have covered yesterday. Then what were main points in debate on secularism? What were main points in debate on secularism in the Constituent Assembly? Is secularism an imposition on the Indian society? So this is actually good question. So we'll discuss this in detail. Okay. Secularism. Secularism. What is secularism? Again, this is very debatable topic. What is secularism? We have different notions of secularism. This term secularism was coined by Holyoake in 1851. Secularism, and context was state should be separated from religion, and there should not be discrimination among the individuals based on religion. That was the context of secularism. Now, what were main points in debate on secularism inside the Constituent Assembly? Our constitution is also considered as secular. Supreme Court of India has established that in 1994 in S.R. Bomai case. 1994. Secular feature is the basic structure of Indian Constitution. And we have 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which added secular word in the preamble. Now, and we have some secular features in the Constitution, Article 25 to 28, Article 29 to 30, and all other features like there will not be any discrimination based on religion. Now, this is constitutional provisions. But when Constitution was framed, when Constitution Assembly was there, when debates were there, specific debate took place on this particular issue. What should be the nature of Indian secular state or secularism? In 1949, October 1949, concrete or explicit debate took place on the issue of this secularism. Same issues. Look, secularism has different aspects. If you see the Western secularism, French secularism, or European secularism, there is strict separation of religion from the politics. That is Machiavellian. Machiavelli's understanding. The state must not intervene in the context of the, or religion must not intervene in the state. So this secularism is understood in the context of relationship between state, individual, and society. Individual and society. The state must not bring religion when it comes to the individuals, or we can say during relationship between society. That means state should not have official religion. State should be neutral in this context. And religion should be personal affair. Personal affair. In public affairs, there should not be role of religion. That is conventional understanding of secularism. And even D. Smith also talked the same. He was the first person to publish book on this particular 1960s, D. Smith, on the Indian secularism. He studied that Indian secularism, Indian features of secularism. There is absolute freedom for the citizens in the context of religion. There is equality, there is no discrimination, but the state is not neutral in the Indian context. So this third feature is not there. So same features were also debated in the Constituent Assembly. What should be the nature of Indian secularism? There were people who were saying that the state should be neutral. The state must not take part in the religion, or religion must not take part in the state. So there should be complete separation in the context of state and religion. So first view was there, or first perspective was there should be state and religion separation. There should be separation. In the Constituent Assembly, one view was there should be complete separation of state from the religion, and religion should be personal matter. It was put forward by K.T. Shah in the Constituent Assembly, K.T. Shah and Masani, Minu Masani, and even Islam, Tazmul Hussain. So these three people argued that, or the first perspective, there should be separation of state from the religion, and religion should be personal affair. That is first view. Second view was that, traditionalist view was, the state must not intervene in the religion. But their concern was different. According to them, religion is faith and it is absolute truth. The state, if state intervenes in the religion, it will demean the religion. So traditionalists were saying that the state must not intervene in the religion because religion is different entity. It is related to faith, and faith cannot be challenged. So traditionalists were saying that the state cannot intervene in the religion. And third was equidistance. Third perspective was equidistance. The state can be equally distant from the all religions. That is equidistance from religion. So these three perspectives were there in the Constitutional Assembly. Third view was given by K.M. Munshi. Third view, equidistance view, this perspective was given by K.M. Munshi. So these were the primary debates in the Constituent Assembly. our point is what were main points in debate on secularism in the Constituent Assembly. So first view was he complete separation. K.T. Shah, you can mention Tajmul Hussain and Masani, Minu Masani. State should be separated from religion because of supremacy of religion, faith, that is conservative traditionalist view. And K. Munshi was saying that the state can maintain equidistance from all the religion. So this was, we can say, major issue in the Constituent Assembly. And finally, we accepted this principal model, distance, as put forward by Rajiv Bhargava, okay, Sarvodharma Samabhav or equidistance model or principal distance model. So you can mention with Rajiv Bhargava, principal model or equidistance, Rajiv Bhargava. That you can mention. This is your first point. What were main points in debate on secularism in the Constituent Assembly? Clear? Okay, 3 debates you can mention. 1, 2, 3. I hope you understood. Second part, is secularism an imposition on the Indian society? Again, this is also debatable. There are certain sections who believe that this concept of secularism is an imposition on Indian society, because Indian society is an essentially religious, and secularism says that you cannot be religious in the public places. But this is also not true. According to Jayaprakash Narayan, it is not religion which makes you communal. It is political use of religion which makes you communal. So it is certainly not कि secularism is an imposition of Indian society. Indian society is religious. It has been religious. There is no doubt. Traditional. But our tradition, our religious instincts, always shaped by tolerance, mutual pluralism, mutual help. So it is unjust to say that secularism is an imposition on Indian society. It is political propaganda. You can mention Jayaprakash Narayan in the conclusion. Religion is different thing. You can be religious while practicing secular practices or secular features. So secularism and religion, they are not opposite. They can live together. Of course, you can mention all those features. Even Constitution has also said the same thing. Okay, our secularism is distinct, it is evolved, and it is unique in nature. Fine. And our society is secular. Constitution has established that India is a secular country. No one can change that. At least constitutional mandate is there, and society is also there. Second, next question. Analyze the evolution of the environmentalist movements in India. Okay, environmentalist movement. Once again, you can start with 1970s Chipko movement. In that, you can mention R.C. Guha, Ramchandra Guha. Okay, participation of women. It was new versus old in the sense livelihood plus environmental protection. Okay, you can mention Sunita Narain. Okay, Vandana Shiva. All these scholars you can mention. Once development versus environment became prominent in the country, environmental movements also started in 1970s Chipko movement, and you can mention scholars also Ramchandra Guha, Sunita Narain, and we can say Sundarlal Bhoguna, leaders and etc. Okay. Then that was first phase 1970s Chipko movement, Apiko movement in Karnataka, and we had some success also. Ministry of Environment was created in 1980s. We had some forest laws, environment protection laws in 1980s. That is success of environmentalist movements. Then global actors also became prominent in the context of construction of dams, Narmada Bachao Andolan, opposition to the nuclear plants in Tamil Nadu, Kudankulam project, Jaitapur in Maharashtra. So in that context, global environmentalist activists, Greenpeace and all those people also became party to these movements, and it became issue of concern. The government put various restrictions on those NGOs, and you can mention Upendra Bakshi also. Certainly there is issue between the government and these environmentalist movements because of that. But environment movements, you can mention tribal movements in Odisha, etc., which try to protect the issues of tribals, Nimeyagiri mountain and all that. I think Vedanta, protest against Vedanta, protest against South Korean company. Okay, so all those you can mention. So this is evolution of environmentalist movements. Sunita Narendra is arguing that, okay, look, we cannot separate this environment and development. We have to take together both environment as well as development. Neo-environmentalism, you can mention that. Last question, in what way do the institutions like National Commission for Women and National Human Rights Commission help us enhance our citizenship rights? Okay, so citizenship rights means all those rights which are required for the enjoyment of basic avenues of the state policies and well-being of the individuals. Okay, so National Commission for Women 1990s, National Commission for Human Rights 1990s, all these bodies are statutory bodies created by the laws of the parliament 1993-1990, you can mention that. And these bodies were created to protect concerns of course women in the context of National Commission of Women and National Human Rights Commission to protect the human rights. Citizenship rights means we can say freedom of speech and expression, then free trial, we can say fair trial, okay, justice, okay, affirmative actions in the context of weaker sections, okay, speedy trials, all those citizenship rights are required or there. And it was expected that these bodies can protect these people, and we have mixed response as far as the working of these bodies are concerned. You can mention, because of National Commission for Women, we have some measures, legal protection like Domestic Violence Act 2005, we have some sexual harassment related provisions, 2013 law, all those you can mention. National Human Rights Commissions, we have some judgments from the Supreme Court to give justice to the under trials and etc. That is you can mention. But again, disappointments are there as far as these bodies are concerned. Constitutional mandate is not there, political appointees are there, expertise are not there, human rights activists are not on the board. So because of that, these bodies fail to live with their profession. You can mention all those observations of the court or the civil rights activist. Fine. So this is all about. You can mention Manipur case and all that in the context of National Commission for Women. That was very unfortunate. You can mention, no problem. Okay. National Human Rights Commission in the context of under trials, custodial death, armed forces, again disappointments are there. So you can mention कि it was envisaged कि these bodies will give effect to the citizenship rights, but we have some positives, some achievements, but disappointments are high. So this is paper first we have completed. If you have any kind of doubts, you can message me, we'll resolve that. Okay, thank you for the joining. Have a nice day.